Hi and welcome back to the next video in our series of creating a biped. And in this video we are going to look at how to use some of Autodesk's rigging tools to start creating a bone structure for our object, our character, that we can then start to animate. This is going to be hopefully a reasonably short series episode. Because we're going to use one of Autodesk's pre-made objects, which is called a CAT, or Character Animation Tool. And it's available in the Creation tab underneath Helpers. So Helpers kind of contains things that might help us do various things, as the name would suggest. And normally we have things like dummies and points and all of those kinds of stuff in standard, but we're going to go down to CAT objects, and we've got a couple of different things in here, so we can kind of make our own bone structure and start adding things like that in, or we can use a pre-made one. Now, because our object is pretty standard shape, it's a pretty sort of classical biped. We're going to go ahead and just use the default biped that they have. So if we go here and we click on CAT Parent, so we're going to get a few different options here, and there's kind of some really good ones that might be worth playing around with. And if you're ever interested in, making really complex kind of objects like this, they come pretty much pre-rigged in 3ds, so that can kind of be a fun side project. But today we're going to look at Biped 1 or BIP 01. You could also use Base Human for this. However, if we look at the similarities between kind of this one, so this is the Base Human, and if we go to biped, we can kind of see that the biped just matches our generic shape just a little bit better. This one's a little bit boxy, so we're going to just go ahead with biped 1. Now, there are kind of different ways in which you can measure this up. I'm just going to left mouse click and drag to place this parent, and the first property that we're dealt with is scale. So you can see on both the bottom left and top right viewports that as I'm holding left mouse button, I can kind of adjust the scale, and I can use that to try and get it to about the right height. Now, kind of about there would be great. I'm mainly focusing on where the neck is in the top right viewport, because I don't want the case where the head is inside the chest like this. Even though the shoulders line up a little bit better, we can adjust those manually in a minute. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that right there. And then I'm probably going to just switch to perspective view, but I'm going to rest it roughly in the front view. In fact, we could just go ahead and do that. So here we can see that it's close, but it's not quite. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come over to here and deselect this. So right click to deselect this over here, and now we can start changing these around. So as default, this should start behaving kind of like a bone structure. We can see if we rotate things, and they start moving the connected bones. We could probably make a dab or something like that almost immediately, but it's not affecting the mesh, right? So I'm just going to quickly try and line these up as best I can, and you'll have multiple different kind of quirks happening. So for example, this kind of doesn't quite line up with our leg's a bit shorter, so if we assume that this is like the knee. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one and I'm just going to press R or go to scale. And I'm just going to kind of scale it on the z-axis. Now what happens is we get a bend. Now that's fine for later. It doesn't matter if it bends when it's animating, but at the moment we want to try and match this pose as closely as possible. And the reason why this is happening is because the distance between the foot and the hip is the same. It hasn't changed, which means in order to scale this bone, it has to move outwards. Okay, so kind of think like if this bit is a triangle, then if we add distance on this bit, it has to kind of become the hypotenuse of that triangle. And if we continue to do that, it's just going to keep going out. It needs to find somewhere to go. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it until it's about right. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and I'm just going to decrease the scale. And as that happens, it's going to come back in line. And we can see from side on now that that knee is in a much better position to represent what we've got. And because this leg is straight, we want to make sure that this leg is also straight. Now, our character has quite big feet, lucky guy. So I'm just going to come along here and kind of try and scale these a little bit as well. So even the feet can kind of scale around. And we could do that with both. Now he's got a bit of a wonky knee situation going on here, so I just want to make sure that we kind of give him even legs. That would be fair, I guess. It's still a bit too high. I guess you could save having to faff with this by doing them both at the same time. It would probably be a bit easier. There we go. That's pretty much in line. So that's okay. And if we look here, we can see that it's not quite right. This bone's kind of on the outside of his hip. So let's just go ahead and kind of move that one inwards. And then come to the joints. So this is where I'm going to move kind of that whole bone along. And now it's a bit better. And then I'm going to move this one in. And this one in. We can see that that's still not quite right. This one has actually... let's just scale this down a little bit. Scale this one down a little bit. There we go. That's better. And now we just need to come along here and move this one in. That's okay. Right? That looks okay to me. Now what we're going to do, we don't really need to worry about the ribs. They kind of align. The pelvis is in about the right shape. And then I'm just going to grab this and I'm going to rotate this because we've got some drop shoulders here. And I'm going to do the same. Actually, I'm going to grab both of those. I'm going to just scale them out the same. That's probably about right. Rotate this one down. And let's just try and grab these and there we go. So you can see that all I'm really trying to do is align this as best I can with our character. And again, our arms here are really straight. So I just want to go ahead and rotate these. They're about the right scale. Maybe this one could sort of come down a bit. So I'm just going to scale both of them as we learnt on last one. Make sure he's got even arms as well. And there we go. So I'm just going to rotate this in a bit. Rotate these down a bit. And I would say that's looking pretty good. And then the head, so the head's a little high, so we're just going to scale this one down a little bit, and that's probably about right. Okay, so here shoulder looks about right, elbow looks about right, hand and waist look about right, knees are about right, feet are about right. And that's really kind of the main setup. You'll notice that I've gone back to back, so obviously the first thing you want to do is select this one. So I've actually somehow managed to get 2 bipeds in there. Let's just get rid of that. I'm just going to take that, I'm going to make sure angle snaps is on, and I'm just going to rotate this 180. Okay, now the last step of actually kind of doing this stage is just to move this inside of your shape. So it doesn't have to be entirely encompassed by the mesh. So even though as humans, obviously we like our bones to be inside our body, you can see that some of this is coming outside of the mesh. That's not a huge problem. The one kind of instance where I'm just going to go ahead and freeze this so I don't move it. The one instance where it might start to cause trouble is where these bones get a bit too close to the mesh of other parts of the body. So to just kind of help avoid that, I'm just going to move that out a little bit. And I'm going to turn angle snaps off for this bit because we need slightly more delicate kind of angling on there. I'm going to just put that out a little bit. And this may seem really tedious and boring, but it will save you time in the long run. You don't need to worry about these kinds of bits. And I'm just going to go in and scale this neck up a bit more. Because we don't want the bottom of the skull affecting this part of the mesh. And once that's done, you're ready to skin it, which is a whole different process which we're going to cover in the next video. So once you've done this, Control S to save, and we'll go on to the next video. Well done.